My name is Sabrina Cole. I'm 27, and 9 months ago, I handed a front door key to my parents and called it peace of mind. I told myself it was an adult thing to do. Army deployment, limited communication, a modest 3-bed ranch that sometimes creaked like an old ship in winter. Just for emergencies, I'd said. My dad, Harold, squeezed my shoulder like I was still 10 and promised, "We'll keep the lights on, kiddo." Mom, Denise, kissed my forehead and told me not to worry. So here I am post-deployment, half numb from jet lag, coffee cold in the cup holder, pulling up to my house, and there's a minivan in the driveway that isn't mine. The yard looks different. New hydrangeas, a pale blue wreath on the door I never chose, and on the porch, patio chairs that don't know me, that don't hold the faint indent of my Sunday mornings. For a full 10 seconds, I consider that I'm on the wrong street. I check my GPS. The map pins my address like a tack through my heart. Not wrong then, just unwelcome. I walk up the steps, arm heavy with duffel bag, and touch the doorknob. My key slides into the lock like muscle memory, and stops. It doesn't turn. It's not even close. The door opens first. She's maybe 30, hair in a messy bun, a toddler on her hip with a fistful of cracker crumbs. She blinks at my uniform and asks, wary but kind, "Can I help you?" "I live here," I say, and I hear how absurd I sound, like the beginning of a bad joke. "This is my house." The woman's face tightens the way faces do when they don't want to hurt you with the truth. "We bought this place in July." She nods at the toddler. "We closed 3 months ago." I stare past her into my former living room, where my thrifted walnut coffee table used to sit. There's a pale rug now, and a toy fire truck tangled in its fringe. Little plastic wheels where my breath should be. "I think there's a mistake," I manage. I pull up photos from the day I closed. The grinning, sweaty 24-year-old who'd beaten the market by a hair and taken a victory selfie beside an overwatered pothos. "That's me. I bought it 3 years ago." "I'm really sorry," she says, so gently it's almost a lullaby. "But it's our address now. We have the deed. Maybe call your realtor?" Then the door is closing, soft as a mercy, final as a verdict. I stand on the porch for a long time, cataloging the changed details. New house numbers screwed in straighter than mine had been. A welcome mat that chirps, "Home sweet home." My key feels like a relic in my palm. Metal that believes in a world that no longer exists. I call Mom. "Sabrina, you landed. Why didn't you—" "There are strangers living in my house." My voice is flat. It's the voice I use on radios when the wind is too loud to carry anything but facts. "They said they bought it in July." Silence. A long, hideous silence that swells until it's all I can hear. "Sweetheart," Mom begins, the old blanket voice, the one for fevers and nightmares. "We were going to explain everything when you were settled." "Explain what?" "We sold the house," she says. "You were gone and the market was incredible. Your father and I—" "You sold my house." The word echoes off the porch columns and comes back misshapen. "How?" "We had power of attorney," Mom says quickly. "All perfectly legal. We didn't want you worrying about a mortgage. Tyler found this opportunity." "Tyler," I repeat, like the name itself is an accusation. "My younger brother, Tyler, who's been finding himself for 7 years between gigs and get-rich-quick detours. Put him on." He picks up with a grin in his voice. "Brina, finally back? Look, you're freaking out for nothing. The equity's safe. Dad set up a family trust." "What trust?" "The Cole Family Investment Trust," he says, and I can hear him leaning back into the couch, self-satisfied. "We pooled the equity so it grows instead of dying in a mortgage. It's family money now." "I never agreed to that," I say, and somewhere deep in my chest, something cold clicks into place. "Where's the money?" "Working," he says. "Jason's startup, AI tools for micro-influencers. It's going to be huge. We put like 80 in. Don't stress. This is how wealth is made." I end the call before I say something that makes me an orphan. The parking lot of the extended stay hotel smells like bleach and heat. I book a week with a card that feels lighter than it did this morning and sit at the tiny laminate desk, sleeves rolled, eyes burning. I pull county records. I pull title history. I pull the air out of my own lungs when I find my parents listed as sellers under power of attorney. A date that makes no sense because on that date I was standing in sand on the other side of the planet. There's a text from Caleb, my boyfriend, 2 hours behind me, but always somehow right beside me. "You in? Water? Sleep? Proud of you." I type and erase a dozen replies before I send the only one that fits. They sold the house. My phone lights up with his call, but I let it ring. If I hear his voice right now, I'll fall apart. Instead, I start a new email. Subject: urgent. Fraudulent sale of residential property. I find Rebecca Lang, real estate attorney with a dozen reviews that use the word relentless like it's a sacrament. I send the email with attachments, closing docs, my deployment orders, the pictures in a tidy digital pile, like offering evidence to a stern, fair God. When the room goes quiet again, the memories rush in to fill the space. Dad teaching me to patch drywall, saying, "This is the kind of thing that keeps men honest. Owning something you have to fix." Mom leaving flowers on the porch the week I closed, whispering, "You did this." Tyler borrowing my truck for a project and returning it with glitter in the vents. I don't cry, not yet. My body knows better than my heart. There's work before there's grief. At 1:10 a.m., my phone vibrates with a new message. Unknown number. Be careful who signs for you. No name, no context. The text is a shard of glass inside a velvet box. A second later, Jenna. I haven't heard that name in a year, not since she tried to convince Caleb that trust means not auditing family. Caleb had called it what it was, manipulation, and put a firm, gentle line between the past and us. We haven't talked about her since. Now she's in my phone like a ghost at the window. Family paper cuts deeper than knives, the next text reads. Call me. I lock the screen and set the phone face down on the desk. The room hums with the refrigerator's little motor. The cheap art print over the bed depicts a sailboat in waters calm enough to make me angry. In the morning, Rebecca replies, "Come in at 9, bring everything." When the first light slides under the blackout shade, I finally cry, quietly, into the sleeve of a government-issued t-shirt, because the only thing worse than losing a house is losing the version of your parents who would never take it. At 8:12, Caleb texts again. I'm outside, coffee and bagel, no pressure. I peel back the curtain, and there he is, leaning against his car, eyes searching the second-floor railing until he finds me. He lifts the bag like a flag of truce. I let him in. He doesn't say I told you so. He doesn't say anything for a long time. He just sets the coffee down, takes my hands, and anchors me back into my body. Breathe, he says. I am, I lie. He studies my face, then nods toward the neat stack of printed records. We'll take these to Rebecca. We'll get the timeline. We'll pull the notary. We'll fight. We? I ask, and I hate that it sounds small. We, he says simply. As we head for the door, my phone buzzes again. Tyler. Last chance to be smart about this. Don't make it ugly. Breathe in. Breathe out. We ride the elevator down. On the way to the attorney's office, we pass my old street. The pale blue wreath is bluer in daylight. In the front room, the toddler spins his toy truck across a rug I never owned, sunlight pooling like honey on the floorboards I refinished with my dad. I don't look away. Some part of me, some unkillable muscle of faith, still wants to believe this is a misunderstanding, that there's a document I forgot, a conversation I don't remember. But faith is not a plan. Paper is. I take Caleb's hand. After this, I say, we change every lock on my life. He squeezes once. Good. We turn the corner toward a low brick building with a brass plaque that reads Lang and Ferris, Attorneys at Law. Inside, there will be copies and exhibits and words like forgery and conversion and unjust enrichment. Inside, there will be the sober, unromantic fact that my family crossed a line and wrote my name on the wrong side of it. At the glass door, I catch our reflection. 2 tired people in yesterday's clothes, one of them learning the difference between trust and access. I push the door open. Rebecca Lang's office smells faintly of toner and eucalyptus, the exact mix of antiseptic and mercy you want, when your life is about to be laid flat on a conference table. She's mid-40s, sharp bob, no jewelry, but a watch that looks like it could count heartbeats. She lets me talk for 2 minutes, 3 at most, before she raises a finger, not to hush me, but to point us both toward gravity. Let's freeze the narrative, she says. Dates and documents. They're the only things that don't lie. I lay everything out. My closing packet from 3 years ago, deployment orders stamped in black, screenshots of county records, the deed transfer where Harold and Denise Cole appear as sellers acting under power of attorney. For Sabrina Cole, a power of attorney I never granted. Rebecca reads like she's dissecting a frog, precise, detached, wrists steady. Here, she says, tapping the POA scan. Notarized March 15th. She looks up at me. Where were you? I pass over my movement orders. Kuwait by March 1st, then forward. So you didn't teleport back to Ohio for a day. Her mouth twitches, not quite a smile. She clicks a pen. The signature? I sign my name on a yellow pad. The S I learned to loop as a kid, the slow curl of the B, the no-nonsense line under the end, like I'm closing a ledger. Rebecca holds it next to the POA signature. Mine looks like mine. Theirs looks like an echo underwater. Not the same hand, she says. And the notary? She checks the stamp. Local. Will subpoena. If she's honest, she'll sink this entire thing in 15 words. My pulse steadies for the first time since the blue wreath. So we have a case. We have a story that courts like to hear, she corrects. A service member deployed overseas. Parents sell her house under a forged POA. Equity disappears into a structure they control. She opens a thin folder she pulled before I arrived. I see the county website header. Sale price, $285,000. Remaining mortgage, about $160,000. Equity, $125,000. According to filings, those proceeds were wired to the Cole Family Investment Trust. Trustee, Harold Cole. Successor trustee, Tyler Cole. Caleb exhales beside me, something between relief and a low, incredulous laugh. Of course Tyler's the successor. Rebecca's pen ticks on paper. I'll need emails between you and your parents during deployment. Anything where you limited their access to the property. I pull up my thread with Mom and Dad, scroll, and wince at my own politeness. Check on the place once a month, only for emergencies. Call me if anything comes up. Rebecca photographs the screen and drops the image into a labeled folder on her desktop like a brick into a foundation. And the money? I ask. Tyler said they put $80,000 into his friend's startup. Something about AI micro-influencer analytics. Let's assume for a moment that's true, Rebecca says. Even if a trustee invests trust assets, he has a fiduciary duty. Here, Harold created a trust with funds arguably obtained via fraud. That contaminates the trust. There's a path to unwind it. What about the rest? Caleb asks. Tyler mentioned $30,000 still in reserves and $15,000 for legal fees and related expenses. We freeze what we can and go after all of it, Rebecca says. We'll send a demand letter today requiring immediate return of proceeds. Simultaneously, we'll pull records from the title company and county. If the notary denies, that's forgery. We'll file civil claims, fraud, conversion, unjust enrichment, and make a complaint to the DA. Criminal charges are a coin toss, but the pressure helps. She looks at me and the air stills. Sabrina, this will not be fast. And the money they already spent might be gone. We can win the judgment and still spend years collecting. I nod. I'd like my life back in something other than installments. That's what we're here for. She prints the letter while I sign engagement papers. The printer chatters like a witness eager to testify. Caleb squeezes my knee under the table, a quiet wee that makes room around my lungs. Next, Rebecca says, sliding the demand letter into a FedEx sleeve, you'll meet your parents. Keep it short. Don't negotiate. Say the words my attorney and return the funds. Then leave. I don't want you improvising. I won't, I say, and mean it, even though part of me aches to ask my mother why she chose a pen over me. The childhood house hasn't changed. The same pair of faded rocking chairs flank the porch, the same spider web in the corner above the porch light, rebuilt and torn a dozen times. Dad opens the door in a t-shirt and the posture of a closing argument. Sabrina, he says, you're being dramatic. Dad, I say, you committed fraud. Mom's behind him with a tray like it's still Sunday, and I'm still the kind of daughter who wants lemonade. Let's sit, she pleads. We can explain. Explain how you sold my house while I was on another continent? My voice doesn't break. I'm a little proud of that. Explain how you moved $125,000 into a trust I never agreed to. Dad gestures to the couch. He stays standing. You left a property idle. We made a smart decision. The market was hot. Your mortgage was wasted interest. We protected your equity and put it to work. The equity you call yours is mine, I say. The trust you call family exists because you stole from me. Tyler saunters in late, baseball cap backwards, a grin set to provocation. It's not stolen if it's in a trust, he says. It's ours now. That's the point of a family fund. The point of a family is consent, I say, and you had none. He shrugs. You're away 9 months out of 12, Brina. What did you want? The place sitting empty while you pay the bank. I paid, I say, with my money, for my house. I take a breath, Rebecca's script warming my tongue. Here's what happens next. My attorney, Rebecca Lang, has issued a demand letter. You have 7 days to return my funds in full. If you do not, we are filing a civil suit for fraud, conversion, and unjust enrichment and referring the forged POA to the district attorney. Dad's jaw ticks. Tiny, left corner, the tell he's never managed to sand down. We did not forge anything. I was in Kuwait on the day this was notarized, I say. Should I call CENTCOM to confirm that, or will the notary suffice? Mom's eyes brim carefully. We were acting in your best interest. You acted in your own, I say softly. Dad snorts, a cold punctuation. You'd really drag your parents into court? Over money? This is the part where I used to fold. The part where Mom says sweetheart and I hand over my time, my silence, my truck. I let the quiet sit on my tongue until it tastes like pennies. Yes, I say. Over my money, over my house, over my name. Tyler laughs, the sound of a match struck for show. Court'll take years. And guess what? The startup's going to hit, and you'll be thanking Dad for keeping you from being a broke soldier with a mortgage. How much of my equity did you put into Jason's company? I ask. He glances at Dad. For a beat, none of them answer. 80, Dad finally says, chin up, like he's daring me to flinch. 30 remains in trust reserves. 15 went to legal structuring and associated fees. There will be no associated fees when this is over, I say. There will be restitution, with interest. Mom sets the tray down, hands shaking. Lemonade sloshes over ice. Please, Sabrina, your father's health. I'm not your insurance policy, I say. Dad's face reddens, then cools. He leans forward, voice low. If you blow up this family over money, don't come back when you realize you've made a mistake. I stand. My legs are steady. I already realized it, I say. I made it when I gave you a key. On the way out, Tyler calls after me, sing-song. Last chance to be smart about this. I don't turn. I know the house behind me by its sounds. The soft thump of Mom's crying, the muffled thud of Dad's fist on the arm of his chair, the skitter of a spider rebuilding above the porch light. Some ecosystems only know how to repair the trap. Back at the hotel, Rebecca's email is waiting. Time-stamped 4:11 p.m. Copies of the demand letter to my parents and to their attorney, Richard Hollis. Instructions for me, no direct contact, forward everything, keep a log. Caleb spreads takeout on the desk. Noodles, something bright and citrusy. He doesn't push me to eat. He just sets a pair of chopsticks near my hand and leans against the mini fridge, watching me like he's taking in weather. Proud of you, he says. I feel like I'm peeling my own skin, I admit. That's what families count on, he says gently. That you'll stop because it hurts. My phone buzzes. Unknown number again. I consider letting it die on the nightstand. Then I swipe. Hello? A breath. Then Jenna's voice. Pleasant, polished, and edged. I hoped you'd call. You were always too trusting of paper, Sabrina. Signatures, titles. Those are just costumes for power. What do you want? To tell you something your boyfriend won't, she says. The smugness almost a perfume. When I dated Caleb, his mother signed for him more than once. Utilities, a lease extension. He didn't notice until it mattered. Families do this. They wear your name like a glove. Jenna, I say, throat tight. If you're trying to help, say something I can use in court. She laughs softly. Oh, this isn't for court. It's for you. Once a family crosses the line, they don't go back. And the second thing, Tyler's friend, Jason, he pitched me last year. Same AI for micro-influencers snake. No product. Just a deck, a logo, and a co-working membership. He'll burn your money on kombucha on tap. How do you know Tyler? People talk, she says, especially when they want money. Why are you calling me? I ask. A pause, and for the first time her voice drops the act. Because you'll believe him before you believe me, she says. And it'll cost you. Don't let it. The line clicks. She's gone, leaving a smear of old perfume in my head and a new kind of quiet in the room. Caleb watches me carefully. Jenna. Yeah. Did she try to... She warned me, I say, surprised to hear the word come out true. About Jason. about not mistaking paper for permission. I forward Rebecca the call notes and Jenna's texts, file them in a folder named Evidence, because I can't bring myself to name a folder Betrayal. Then I sit on the edge of the too-firm bed and stare at the single key on my ring like it's a totem of a world that evaporated. Caleb sits beside me. "Tomorrow," he says, "we start putting locks on things they can't touch." "Tomorrow," I echo. Outside, a siren rises and falls like a breath you can't quite catch. I press my palms together until the ache centers me. Paper cuts bleed for a long time, but they clot. The court summons landed in their mailbox before the weekend, and by Monday morning, my parents had retained a lawyer. Richard Hollis. Rebecca called him a wealth preservation specialist, which is code for someone who helps rich families keep their secrets tidy. By Tuesday, his reply to our demand letter hit my inbox. My clients acted in good faith for their daughter's benefit. Miss Cole's aggressive legal posture is causing undue emotional distress to her elderly father. I read it twice and laughed, a thin, humorless sound. I wasn't the soldier anymore. I was the villain. Rebecca was unbothered. "Predictable," she said. "They're posturing. Mediation's next. Stay composed." The mediation took place in a downtown conference suite that smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee. My parents sat on one side, Richard in his perfect suit between them. Rebecca and I sat on the other. Tyler strolled in late, sunglasses hooked into his shirt like a prop. The mediator, a gray-haired woman with patience carved into every line of her face, opened with, "Let's remember, this is family." Rebecca answered before I could. "Exactly why it's tragic we're here." For 2 hours, I listened as my father spoke in calm, rehearsed sentences about sound financial management. My mother dabbed tears into a tissue, and Tyler scrolled his phone until it was his turn to speak. He looked up, voice syrupy. "We didn't take anything. We reallocated resources. Sabrina's home was a dormant asset. Now it's fueling a startup that'll change marketing." Rebecca's eyebrow flicked up. "Pre-revenue, correct?" Tyler blinked. "What?" "The company your father invested in. No sales, no product, no income. That's called pre-revenue. You invested $80,000 of stolen equity into vaporware." Dad's jaw clenched. "It's in early stages." "And the other $45,000? She pressed. 15 in legal fees, 30 in trust reserves." "Exactly," Richard interrupted smoothly. "Those reserves remain untouched for the family's benefit." Rebecca's tone cooled another degree. "They'll remain untouched until a judge orders transfer to my client." The mediator sighed. "Perhaps a compromise." "No," I said. "They forged my name. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a crime." The room fractured then, voices overlapping, my mother pleading, my father accusing. The mediator called for a break, but it was useless. We left with nothing resolved. 2 weeks later, I got the call. Mom's voice was shredded. "Your father's had a heart attack." I froze. "Is he alive?" "Yes, it was mild. They say stress. You've pushed him too far." The guilt came first, automatic, old as childhood, but it evaporated when she added, "If he dies, Tyler becomes sole trustee. He won't be as forgiving as your father." Forgiving. The word curdled. After I hung up, Caleb found me sitting on the hotel bed, still in my boots. He crouched in front of me. "What happened?" I told him, every syllable. He was quiet for a long time, then said, "That wasn't information, Sab. That was leverage." Tyler called the next evening. He didn't even say hello. "Dad's home," he said, "but he's weak. The lawsuit's killing him. If you drop it, we can settle this privately." "I'll settle when you give back what you stole." He sighed like I was a child missing the lesson. "Look, when the startup starts pulling revenue, I'll make sure you get your cut, but if you keep pushing and Dad dies, I'm not releasing a penny. As trustee, that's my right." I felt my stomach knot. "You're threatening to starve me out of my own money?" "I'm protecting what's left of this family. You're the one tearing it apart." "You forged my name, Tyler." "Dad did. He stopped, realizing what he'd admitted. "Look, you don't understand investments. Sometimes risk—" "Goodbye," I said, and ended the call. Rebecca listened to the recording. Yes, I'd started recording every call. "Excellent," she said. "That's evidence of coercion and potential breach of fiduciary duty. Keep it." She leaned back. "Here's the truth. We'll win. But even if we do, the money might be gone. The startup's already hemorrhaging cash. We'll try to freeze assets, but there's not much left to freeze." The words hit harder than any insult Tyler could have thrown. Winning might still mean losing everything. Caleb put an arm around me later that night. Then we make it about principle. You told me once, you can survive without money, not without a spine. Keep yours. He was right. But as I stared at the hotel ceiling, I couldn't shake the memory of my father teaching me to fix leaky pipes, saying, you take care of what's yours. Somewhere along the way, he'd stopped believing that applied to me. By month's end, the Cole family trust account was frozen pending litigation. Tyler went ballistic online, posting cryptic updates about betrayal and fake victims. Mom texted at midnight, your father can't sleep. His heart monitor beeps every time your name comes up. Please, sweetheart, just stop. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened Rebecca's newest email, trial date April 17th, and stared at it until the words blurred. Outside, Seattle rain streaked the glass. Inside, I watched my reflection, tired eyes, jaw set, and thought, this is what it costs to unlearn obedience. I didn't feel brave, just awake. Courtrooms aren't built for warmth. Everything in them is beige, hard-edged, and humming with the faint electricity of judgment. The morning of the trial, I sat between Caleb and Rebecca in a row of wooden benches that smelled faintly of disinfectant and dust. Rebecca's voice was low, calm, measured. Remember, short answers, facts only. You've already won on paper. Don't lose it with emotion. Easy for her to say. My parents sat a few feet away, my mother's eyes red, my father pale and rigid in a cheap suit that looked borrowed. Tyler leaned back behind them, chewing gum, looking everywhere but at me. The bailiff called the case, Cole versus Cole, fraud, conversion, unjust enrichment. I never thought I'd hear my own last name pronounced like an autopsy. The first witness was the notary public who'd supposedly notarized my signature. Rebecca guided her gently through the questions. Did you ever meet the plaintiff, Ms. Sabrina Cole? No, the notary said. I notarized several documents for Harold Cole, but I've never met Sabrina. Did you notarize this power of attorney? She squinted. No, ma'am, that's my stamp, but that's not my signature. Rebecca looked at the judge. No further questions. Dad's attorney, Richard Hollis, didn't even cross-examine. He just shifted in his seat and scribbled something on a yellow pad. The first domino had fallen. Then Rebecca brought up my deployment records, black and white proof that I was in Kuwait 2 weeks before the document's signed date. The courtroom was silent except for the faint creak of my father's chair. When it was my turn to testify, Rebecca guided me like a surgeon. She asked where I'd been, how the house was purchased, and what I'd instructed my parents before I left. Only emergencies, I said. Check once a month. Call if something came up. I never authorized a sale. She asked how I found out. I showed up to my own house, I said quietly. A woman with a baby answered the door. She said they bought it 3 months earlier. Rebecca nodded. What did you feel at that moment? I hesitated, the answer too large for language. Like my whole family had vanished, I said finally. And then I realized they hadn't vanished. They'd just moved on without me. A small, startled murmur rippled across the benches. When my mother took the stand, she wept almost immediately. Richard's voice was soft, coaxing. Mrs. Cole, did you and your husband believe you were acting in your daughter's best interest? She nodded, tears streaking her foundation. We didn't want her to worry about payments while she was in a war zone. We knew she'd agree if she were here. Rebecca rose. Mrs. Cole, did your daughter ever give you permission to sell her home? She didn't have to, Mom said, voice cracking. She trusted us. And yet, Rebecca said, stepping closer, you signed her name, didn't you? My mother's silence was the loudest sound in the room. Her lip trembled, and then, so softly I almost missed it, she said, yes. Gasps. My heart pounded. My father's head dropped. Tyler cursed under his breath. Rebecca nodded once. Thank you, Mrs. Cole. No further questions. When Dad took the stand, his pride came with him. He spoke in controlled, deliberate tones, the same way he'd used to lecture us about responsibility when I was a kid. I made a business decision, he said. I acted as any father would, to protect family wealth. Rebecca's voice cut clean through it. By selling property that wasn't yours? He met her eyes with defiance. By ensuring that my daughter's hard work didn't rot away in a dead mortgage. This was about the family's future. Whose family? She asked. Because your own daughter was left homeless. For the first time, Dad faltered. Richard tried to recover the narrative, something about misunderstood intentions and lack of malice. But it was too late. The judge's face said everything. This wasn't investment. It was betrayal with paperwork. The verdict came after 3 days. Judgment in favor of the plaintiff. The words dropped like a stone in water. Final. Irreversible. My parents were ordered to return $125,000 plus interest and legal fees, about $148,000 total. The judge declared the Cole Family Investment Trust invalid, citing it as constructed with fraudulently obtained assets. He ordered Tyler to release the remaining $30,000 held in trust reserves directly to me. The rest, what remained of it, would be paid through a monthly plan, $20,500 a month, until the debt was satisfied. Rebecca squeezed my shoulder as the gavel struck. "We got justice," she whispered. But justice doesn't always feel like victory. Across the aisle, Mom sobbed quietly into her hands. Dad stared at the floor like a man measuring the weight of his own name. Tyler glared at me, jaw tight, eyes filled with something that looked less like hatred and more like disbelief, that I'd actually won. When the judge adjourned, he muttered something to our lawyers, then turned to my parents. "You're lucky your daughter chose civil court," he said. "Otherwise, we'd be talking about sentencing, not restitution." Outside the courthouse, the air smelled like rain and exhaust. Caleb handed me my coat and asked softly, "How do you feel?" "Empty," I said, "like I won a war where no one's left to celebrate." He took my hand. "Then let's go home." I almost laughed. "I don't have one." He squeezed gently. "Then let's build one." Behind us, Tyler's voice carried across the courthouse steps. "You didn't win, Sabrina. You just delayed. You'll see." I turned, met his stare, and for the first time, he looked small. "No," I said quietly. I ended it. That night, Rebecca sent over the final paperwork. She also forwarded a message from the DA's office. Criminal charges declined. Family financial disputes rarely result in prosecution unless there are aggravating factors. Of course, because apparently forgery isn't aggravating if your last names match. Still, when I signed the settlement documents, my hands didn't shake. The house was gone. The money would trickle in. But the illusion that blood equals loyalty, that was gone too. And in its place, something steadier was growing. Resolve. The check cleared 3 weeks later. $30,000, the only untainted piece of what had once been my future. Rebecca called it a partial restitution. I called it the first brick in a wall between me and the people who used to be my family. I used it for a down payment on a small 2-bedroom Craftsman north of Tacoma. The listing called it a fixer-upper with potential. It had peeling paint, a warped back door, and the faint smell of salt in the wood. But when I walked in, it felt quiet in a way no hotel ever had. "This is it," Caleb said, standing beside me in the entryway. "No trust funds, no signatures but yours." I smiled, though it didn't quite reach my eyes. And only one key. I changed the locks the next morning. All 3 doors, even the garage. When the locksmith handed me the new set, I stared at the glint of metal in my palm. They were small, ordinary things, but they felt heavier than metals. No one else had copies, not my parents, not Tyler, not anyone. The court-ordered payments started arriving a month later, $2,500, wired every 30 days from my father's account. The memo line always said, "Cole Judgment Payment," like an epitaph that refused to fade. Mom sent text messages sometimes. "Your father's blood pressure spiked again. He blames the stress. Can we talk, just to understand each other? You used to be so forgiving." I never replied. Tyler sent an email the day the first payment left his father's account. "Hope you're happy. You broke Dad's heart. The company could have been huge if you hadn't interfered." I didn't respond to him either, because the truth was I wasn't happy, but I was free. Freedom has a strange sound. It's quiet. Mornings, I drank coffee on my own porch, where no one had tampered with my life or my locks. Sometimes Caleb joined me. Sometimes he didn't. We'd learn to exist side by side without needing to fill every silence. The house became my therapy. I patched walls, sanded cabinets, repainted each room myself. The work grounded me. Every nail was proof that I could build something no one else could take. I started attending a veteran support group on Thursdays. The first time I told my story, about the forged signature, the fake trust, the startup that swallowed my savings, the room fell silent. Then another woman across the circle nodded slowly. "It happened to me too," she said. "My brother sold my truck while I was overseas, said it was just sitting there. That's when I realized this wasn't an isolated betrayal. It was a pattern, a loophole in love that too many people fall through. I started helping Rebecca's firm on a volunteer basis, advising deployed service members on how to protect their assets. We created a simple checklist. Never give power of attorney without expiration and verification. Video record every authorization. Use property management companies for empty homes. Keep digital backups of all signatures. If someone had told me those 4 lines 3 years ago, I might still have my house. Caleb never asked me to forgive them. He just stayed. Through the paperwork, the silence, the rebuilding. Sometimes he'd catch me staring at the blank living room wall and say, "You don't owe anyone a happy ending." I'd answer, "I don't, but I owe myself a peaceful one." 6 months later, I got a letter. Handwritten, old-fashioned, the kind that carries ghosts. It was from my mother. "Your father's condition has worsened. He still refuses to speak your name, but I know he keeps the old photo of you in his wallet. I hope you're safe. I hope you're happy. Please, if you ever find forgiveness in your heart, call me." I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. Not to throw away, but not to answer either. Some things are better left unread by time. On my 31st birthday, I invited a few friends from the veterans group over. We grilled in the backyard, strung up fairy lights, and for the first time since everything fell apart, I laughed until I cried. Near the end of the night, Caleb handed me a small box. Inside was a single silver key on a braided leather chain. "It's for you," he said. "A backup, but only if you want someone to have it." I closed the box gently. "Not yet," I said. "Maybe someday." He nodded. "That's an answer, too." When the guests left and the lights dimmed, I stood alone on my porch, barefoot, a glass of wine in hand, watching the waves of the sound catch the moonlight. The new door behind me clicked softly as it locked. I thought about everything that key represented. Control, autonomy, boundaries carved out of pain. I wasn't the same woman who'd left her parents a spare set just in case. That version of me still believed family meant safety. Now I know better. Family isn't who you give your trust to. It's who earns the right to hold it, and never betrays it when the door is closed. I set the key on the table beside me and whispered, almost to the wind, "This time, no one signs for me." The sea answered in quiet rhythm against the shore, and for the first time in years, I believed it.